How do Indigenous youth exercise design agency while utilizing design tools to construct narratives connected to their cultural identities? This is the question that we have been investigating in our partnership work with Indigenous communities across Utah.
Integrating computing into learning has become a critical focus in the learning sciences. Central to this integration is the concept of computational thinking, which includes practices beyond just programming, such as cognitive and problem-solving skills. As this work evolves, there is a growing need to develop pedagogical tools to support computational thinking for all learners.
Scholars who have considered the cultural responsiveness of these programming tools largely focus on modifying the surface features. These changes result in a rich, culturally responsive activity, but they do not change the underlying structure of the tool itself. In our work, we suggest that it is necessary to recognize the degree to which the tools themselves are embedded with their own cultural perspectives and the degree to which they inherently privilege certain knowledge and value systems. Here, we share work from an ongoing design-based research and present two cases to illustrate how RPG Maker shapes the narratives Indigenous youth are able to share.
The format of our game design workshop was informed first and foremost by our goal of building youth's cultural identities through digital technology creation. It was also informed by prior iterations of game design workshops and their design tensions. One ongoing design tension has been the role of community members and local Indigenous knowledge in the design process. In response, our educator partners curated material about Indigenous cultures, including a range of stories, poetry, and photography for this camp. Another tension has been to develop youth's understandings of how the game-making technology either affords or constrains their abilities to represent their cultural practices or identities. Therefore, we made additional space in the curriculum for youth to develop more familiarity with RPG Maker before crafting their games.
We employed a case study methodology where each participant's design process served as the functional bounds of a case. To develop cases, we drew on a myriad of qualitative data such as design artifacts, in-process photographs, researcher audio field notes, and final reflective interviews with each participant. We triangulated all of these data sources to reconstruct each participant's design process as a case.
Our findings include the cases of two young Indigenous females. 16-year-old Ayana created a sandbox-style game in which the player explores the snowy, forested landscape with a companion horse. Workshop participants were asked to brainstorm mind maps using categories like environment, characters, and conversations between characters to assist in placing their game ideas into RPG Maker. For characters, Ayana included a category for companion, and this appeared in the game as a horse named Zelith. The idea of a companion animal was inspired by playing Never Alone, a game co-developed with the Inupiat people of Alaska to teach their young people about tribal stories on the first day of the workshop. Ayana was also reasonably successful in developing characters for her game. However, these characters didn't contribute to an overall game narrative. She reflected that the game wasn't as interesting as she thought it would be because, quote, "I haven't really gotten to the story," unquote. She spent most of her time working on the maps and reflected that she struggled with having the characters talk to one another.
15-year-old Yvette created a sandbox-style game in which the player roams around her designed world with a companion dog named Max. She expressed that this was also inspired by Never Alone. The idea of seasons was a prominent theme in her game, which was inspired by the initial Candyland-style game the participants made during the Design Jam activity on the first day. Yvette also successfully designed ice and lava places in her game world. In the final reflective interview, she explained, "I designed my own maps," but said she used preloaded options for many other aspects of her game because she couldn't figure out how to make them look. Though RPG Maker does in fact support game designers in designing their own maps from scratch, Yvette instead modded 20 preloaded map options, which was something we saw novice designers do again and again. The use of preloaded options highlights the challenges and constraints of telling stories within a tool like RPG Maker.
Our cases provide insights about how even computational technologies designed for novices afford and constrain forms of expression. We further argue that the types of affordances and constraints are inherently culturally situated. This reveals critical design considerations in how computational tools are designed and implemented for all. While drawings suggest that Ayana and Yvette could express their cultural identities, these identities do not appear in their games at all. Our data suggests that RPG Maker constrained youth's abilities to express themselves in relation to culturally situated ways of knowing and being. This is evidenced in the lack of narrative or game structure found in their games.
We challenge designers of technology to design for transparency rather than assuming knowledge of computer science principles or privileging certain types of knowledge systems. This shift toward designing more culturally flexible tools is critical in designing for inclusive computing cultures. Additionally, while the lack of narrative guiding Ayana and Yvette's games may be culturally patterned, we believe it has more to do with their lack of expertise in how to translate aspects of their identities into a game. Curiously, they found the design of Never Alone inspiring and were able to translate pieces of it into their design. This demonstrates the power of and need for integrating examples that link game design and culture.
Our study highlights the cultural biases embedded in not only the structure of what we design, but also the ways in which we design. A critical takeaway of our study is that computational tools, like RPG Maker, need to be in a process of continual iteration, particularly through a co-design process with diverse communities to identify cultural biases, especially in structural design features. Put simply, these technologies are themselves cultural artifacts, and this should inform whether and how we implement them.
As we look to expand access to and broaden participation in computer science moving forward, it is critical that we are designing computational tools that are culturally responsive across communities and contexts, rather than just overlaying cultural content onto a potentially structurally biased tool.
We'd like to thank Title VI and other organizations for allowing us to do this important research. This material is based upon work supported by the National Science Foundation under grant number 1623404. Please contact the contributing authors if you have any further questions.